Rachel! Stabbed her.
Okay, where on the body is the patient stabbed?
In the chest. She's trying to breathe.
The next piece of information that you need to know is that she is dead.
Her parents lost their only daughter.
I wish we could go back.
Hey there, welcome back. Have you ever been in a love triangle? It's difficult, to say the least. Inevitably, feelings get complicated and at least one person is left hurt, if not everyone involved. It all gets even more ridiculous when it happens with teenagers. You guys, I just have to tell you about a new game that I have been completely obsessed with recently. What game, I hear you ask? Well, it's called Storrington Hall. In this game, you play as the daughter of a family that has recently inherited a mansion. The daughter's name is Jane, and you get to follow her adventure through this romantic and fantastical journey. You do this by solving puzzles to uncover who Jane really is, whose affairs she's involved with, and the ultimate truth of her character. One of my favorite aspects of the game is the mansion itself. It sure needs a little bit of work when Jane's family moves in, but you can customize and decorate it to your unique taste. I mean, who hasn't dreamed of living in their dream house? And the satisfying aesthetics don't stop at interior decor. You have tons of outfits to choose from, and you can wear them to parties and balls that you will be able to throw. These days, it's so hard to catch a break. Trust me, your girl knows how stressful it can be. But with Storrington Hall, it gives me the perfect activity to do when I need a little bit of me time. So if you guys have been searching for a great way to relax, look no farther than the description of this video, where you can find the link to download Storrington, or even better, just scan my QR code right here, which will give you a bonus to all new players, including 6 hours of infinite lives. Don't let me stop you. Download Storrington Hall now. They're just not as prepared to deal with serious situations, and emotional maturity is not really a thing when you're fresh off the high school benches. This was exactly the case of Rachel Wade, Sarah Ludman, and Joshua Camacho. Josh had broken up with Rachel and had hooked up with Sarah, but Rachel wouldn't take no for an answer. And Sarah hated this. She taunted and harassed her, hoping she would stop her invasive behavior. But this only made things worse, and before long, the girls were at all-out war. But one day, one of them would lose their life, and the other would spend the rest of her life in prison for it. Trigger warning, we're about to discuss themes of violence and death. If that's not something you can handle, this is your chance to turn back and check out the other videos. But if you're ready, let's dive in. Today's story begins in Pinellas Park, Florida in 2009. This was the home of 19-year-old Rachel Wade.
Rachel was actually a fun, loving child, very happy-go-lucky.
I was very active in school, did whatever I could, whatever clubs I could join.
But when she was 15, Rachel started hanging out with the wrong crew. She dropped out of school and would be gone from home late into the night without letting her parents know where she was. There was something else.
Boys became her biggest interest, and she was chasing different boys. I don't think they were always the best boys to be with. We went through some tough times with her.
When she was 18, Rachel got a job as a waitress and moved out of her family home. She was independent, courageous, and confident she would find her way in life. In 2009, Pinellas Park was also the home of 18-year-old Sarah Ludman.
Rachel Wade was sort of an all-American girl.
Sarah was a good kid. She had the whole world ahead of her.
They were both good girls with good grades, decent jobs, and loving families. No one suspected what they were going through at the time, the drama they had created for themselves. Rachel and Sarah were both infatuated with the same boy, Joshua Camacho. Needless to say, this caused some serious conflicts between the two.
I wish we could go back, and instead of going against each other, maybe sitting down and talking through and just understanding that we didn't need him.
Of course, no one needs a partner who gives you mixed signals and is seeing other people at the same time. Rachel had met Josh in the summer of 2008. He was the same age as her, but he behaved pretty differently.
He was a player. He definitely had this bad boy image. He was all tatted up. He had pictures of himself, with guns and pit bulls and smoking weed, and just had this whole rap star persona.
But as you've probably guessed, when there's a persona, there are also hidden realities. The real person behind the mask.
He was portraying himself to be. I just saw a whole nother side of him when we were alone. It was really good at first. About a month or two after we started dating, I started getting phone calls.
Rachel started getting calls from Sarah Ludman, who claimed to be Josh's girlfriend. What? Rachel was shocked. Who was first, at least? It turns out, neither. Josh started dating both girls in the summer of 2008. Instead of telling him off for being a classic douchebag, the girls started fighting with each other. For Sarah, Josh was her first love and her first boyfriend. For Josh, as he ended up saying in court, both girls were friends with benefits. The problem was that neither of the girls knew just how little Josh cared for them. They couldn't stand the idea that the other girl would steal her boyfriend. So before long, their contempt escalated to harassment.
She decided that she was gonna come to my job, made me spill some drinks. They followed me and my roommate home and tried to run us off the road, and it kind of just kept getting worse after that night.
That's when Rachel decided to stand up for herself, but not in the right way. She started leaving Sarah angry messages and voicemails, threatening her in all these terrible ways.
Seriously, I told you to wash back and not kill with him. Now your ass is mine, and I'm guaranteeing you I'm no murder you. I'm letting you know that now, because you know what? Josh might have played me, but I'm gonna play your ass out too. Watch.
Sheesh. This is just one of the voice messages Rachel left Sarah in 2008. Needless to say, Sarah was scared at this point. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Josh didn't intervene or break up with the girls. If anything, he just seemed entertained by the scandal.
It just got really acrimonious. Sarah was so upset by those messages.
That's, what both of the girls had in their heads. Well, Josh wasn't the problem, it was the other girl.
Rachel and Sarah had been at war for months, but on April 14th, 2009, things were about to take a turn for the worse. Much worse. Sarah had been crying at school the whole day. The situation was getting worse and worse with Josh, and he didn't seem to understand just how bad her conflict with Rachel was. Still, he was unwilling to break up with either one of them. All of her friends had told her to dump Josh. He simply wasn't worth her time, energy, and stress. He did not appreciate the turmoil she was feeling. But Sarah wasn't ready for the breakup yet. That evening, though, Sarah visited Rachel at her apartment.
I heard her outside beeping her horn to let me know that she was out there. I was home alone, so I wanted to leave.
On her way out, Rachel made a quick decision. She would grab a kitchen knife just in case things escalated beyond control. Sarah shouted at her to stay away from Josh and then drove past her house and left angry and frustrated. Rachel then went over to a friend's house while Sarah and Josh met up at his sister's place to watch a movie. But this wasn't enough for Josh.
But he kept texting with Rachel.
That's right, he couldn't stop being a player, even when he was on a date. But by now, these texts between Josh and Rachel weren't friendly. Rachel was urging him to stop seeing Sarah, and he was just telling her off for it. At around midnight on April 15th, Sarah realized she was way past her curfew and her parents must be worried. She'd come to Josh's sister place with her van, so as she was getting ready to drive off, Josh's sister and her friend tagged along. They wanted Sarah to drop them off at a restaurant. So the three girls hopped into the van and Sarah drove away. Just as they were making their way down the street, another car parked facing the opposite direction flagged them down. Sarah could see the driver very clearly.
She said, oh my gosh, Rachel is right up the street.
Rachel leaned down on her car's hood and lit up a cigarette. She was waiting to see Josh. But as Sarah drove past, it became clear something was going to go down. Sarah wasn't going to just drive past Rachel. She stopped the van.
She pulled up about 5 feet in front of my car.
What they didn't know is that Rachel had a knife.
After months of threatening texts, voicemails, and harassment at work, both girls wanted to confront each other as physically as possible. Of course, this wasn't exactly wise. As Sarah got out of her van and started walking towards Rachel, Rachel pulled out her kitchen knife.
I grabbed the knife, thinking it might scare her off, and she approached me anyways.
The girls fought for under 5 seconds. Hair was pulled, words were shouted, and before long, Sarah got back into her van. But something was off.
It was pulling hair, next thing you know, it stops.
She hit me 3 or 4 times. I started swinging back. And the next thing I remember, she let go of me and turned around and walked back to her van.
When she looked, she realized in horror that she'd been hit in the chest 3 times. It happened so fast that not even Rachel realized what she'd done.
I just saw blood on the knife. I didn't physically remember stabbing her. I didn't see where she was.
Meanwhile, Sarah's 2 friends were in the van screaming and scared that Sarah would lose her life. The first thing Sarah did was call Josh. She told him it hurts, and then she passed out. She didn't have the strength to call an ambulance in time. Sarah fell out of the van and into the road. As she was lying in a pool of struggling to breathe, one of her friends called 911.
Rachel! Down her.
Okay, where on the body is the patient stabbed?
In the chest. She's trying to breathe.
Meanwhile, Rachel threw the knife on the roof of a house and went to sit down on the porch of another house. She knew what was coming. It's not like she could get out of this. Sarah was taken to the hospital within minutes, but her injuries didn't look good.
She had a small injury here, stab wound here. She was stabbed right in the heart. It pierced her heart.
Rachel had delivered a fatal injury to Sarah, but she had no idea. In her mind, she simply fought off another girl and sent a clear message to back off. As Josh arrived at the scene at his sister's request, Sarah was being taken away by the ambulance, but by sunrise, she was dead. Right after the attack, Detective Mike Lynch was assigned on the case. This was before Sarah was declared dead. Already, serious evidence was piling up against Rachel.
I ended up finding Rachel sitting in what used to be a bench located in front of the residence. Her demeanor was calm.
Rachel had finished all she had to do to end her feud with Sarah. In fact, it gets pretty creepy. When Rachel stabbed Sarah, she threw the knife on a neighbor's house and just said, "I'm done." This was a cold move, but she had no idea she truly was done, and so was her frenemy. Now she was just waiting for the police to come for her.
I was scared, but at the same time, I didn't really know what to think or how to react.
It was a sort of paralysis after doing something so terrible for the first time. Rachel had grown up in a stable, loving family with no history of violence or aggression of any kind. Now, her life would change forever. When Detective Lynch found Rachel sitting on the porch, he invited her to the police station for questioning. She said okay, unaware of the fact that Sarah was dead.
I wasn't under arrest or anything, so again, I was thinking, maybe it's not that bad.
But as soon as Rachel was inside the interrogation room, the detectives broke the news to her. It was bad.
When I was down at the hospital, I saw where she was stabbed at.
She made no indication that there had been a stabbing, that there was a knife involved.
Hoping that Sarah would be fine, Rachel was trying to hide as much information as she could so as not to look guilty. But didn't the police officer just tell her she'd gone to the hospital? They just had to paint the whole picture for Rachel to grasp the full gruesome reality of what she'd done.
The next piece of information that you need to know is that she is dead. Okay. She died as a result of these stab wounds.
Rachel finally understood that she would be going to jail for a long time. This was the end of her studies, her freedom, and her dreams.
When they told me that she had passed away at the hospital, I kind of lost it. I couldn't believe what they were telling me.
She had let her anger and frustration get the better of her, and now she would pay forever. Rachel Wade was charged with second-degree murder, and her bail was set at $500,000. Her family could hardly believe that this was their daughter, a person they had loved and supported in the best way that they could for 19 years. Now she had gone off and done the worst thing in the world.
Fact is, she stabbed her and she killed her. For second-degree murder, I didn't have to prove she intended to murder her.
Rachel's trial began in July 2010. In court, everyone agreed that Rachel didn't intend on murdering Sarah, but that she went at her with a knife, intending to do serious harm. There was also the fact that Sarah had approached Rachel looking to confront her. Her defense attorney wanted to play this card.
Sarah came looking for a fight, so it was apparent to me that this was a good self-defense case.
Finally, the true tragedy of this story would be revealed when Josh Camacho would be called to the stand. He dressed well and didn't act like a tough bad boy anymore, but what he said shook the girls' families. According to him, Sarah and Rachel were just friends with benefits. The boy that 2 girls killed each other for shrugged off their love and obsession for him. It was just the case of a couple of girls he'd slept with, he said.
When he came into court, the appearance was just a little guy, very quiet, very soft-spoken. He says, I wasn't dating either girl. They're not my girlfriend.
It was pretty shocking to everyone who attended the trial, let alone the girls' families.
After these girls and their friends and their families talked about how he was their whole world and said, I was just sleeping with them.
Imagine hearing these words and knowing you'll go to prison for the rest of your life for this douchebag. The prosecution's final argument was the most obvious one: the horrible voicemails Rachel had left Sarah over the course of the last months before the murder.
I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna beat your ass. He can get anything he wants from me. You still got your mommy and daddy's curfew. Why do you run your mouth and why are you that pathetic? So keep talking, Sarah. I'm gonna teach you it. I'm telling you now.
There was also that voicemail where Rachel promised she would kill Sarah.
Seriously, I told you to wash back and not kill with him. Now your ass is mine and I'm guaranteeing you I'm no murder you.
It's not like Rachel could concoct any defense against this. Now the murder looked premeditated.
I couldn't believe that it was me. It was out of character for me to say anything like I said to her.
Please tell me, Sarah, why you would be a dumb enough to put a brand new picture of you and Josh at the beach on your MySpace. I'm no murder you. I'm gonna play your ass out too. Watch. You're a fat and I'm gonna kill you.
How can you think of taking someone's life over posting a picture with your crush online? Even if you're dating, can't you just leave? Rachel had one last trick up her sleeve in court. She took the witness stand. There, she said Sarah made several threats to her via calls and voicemails too. Unfortunately, she claimed she had deleted them.
It's a shame that Rachel didn't save voicemails from Sarah with threats, but she did.
Indeed, her claim didn't amount to much, as she couldn't produce any evidence. And even if Sarah came at her to beat her up that night, it was Rachel carrying a knife, and it was Rachel who plunged it into Sarah's heart. In 3 hours, the jury had a verdict.
We, the jury, find as follows: ask that the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of murder in the second degree as charged. So say we all. Michael Schwartz, foreperson of jury, July 23, 2010.
2 months later, Rachel appeared in court again to receive her final sentence. It was a pretty strange situation. She could either walk free after serving time as a youthful offender or get the maximum sentence. Pretty much black or white. But when Sarah's mom, Gay Ludman, appeared in court, it was clear it wasn't looking good for Rachel.
This is my daughter. She lays in a cemetery. I go visit her there.
Her message was clear. Even though Rachel was in prison, she was alive. Sarah didn't have this privilege, thanks to Rachel. Rachel Wade was sentenced to 27 years behind bars. But to Rachel's parents, this isn't justice, nor does it bring them any happiness. They agree with Sarah's mom. It's terrible that one girl had to lose her life.
We've lost our daughter as far as having her home with us, but she's still here for us, fortunately, to visit and look forward to someday her coming home. But Sarah's lost. You know, her parents have lost their only daughter.
And to think who Sarah lost her life for.
Both parents, I mean, they felt like they did everything they could to be good parents. They'd raised girls that they were proud of.
And then a bad boy came along, treated them with no respect, and turned their worlds upside down. It's a truly tragic story for two girls who had their whole lives ahead of them.
Not sitting down to talk to Sarah would be my biggest regret. We should have met up and we should have talked. And maybe it should have been him that we confronted. Instead of going after him, maybe walking away from him. No matter what somebody says about you or to you, it's not going to resolve anything to go out and fight him. And really, you could end up here.
She couldn't have said it better. If there's a lesson to be learned from this horrific case, it's don't lose your life, your freedom, or your happiness over a person who doesn't care for you. Violent conflicts are immature. Walk away from them, and you'll be much better off. Hey, thanks for watching. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more blood-chilling cases. Till next time, and stay safe. So, if you guys have been searching for a great way to relax, look no farther than the description of this video, where you can find the link to download Storyton, or even better, just scan my QR code right here, which will give you a bonus to all new players, including 6 hours of infinite lives. Don't let me stop you. Download Storyton Hall now.